the mic, Jim?
Yep.
Good?
We gotta turn it on.
Okay, I think it's on. How's that, a little better?
Yeah.
Just raise it up a tiny bit.
You got it, you got it.
All right. Thank you, Jim. All right, volume good, not too loud?
Yeah.
Whoa, it just fell.
It fell off.
It's not a very good start.
Higher, Jim.
Thanks.
Try that.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, yeah, that's all right, right? Persistence, that works in nature and it'll work for us today. Well, Tom, first of all, thank you very much. It's a kind introduction. And I really appreciate the parameters today between the flags because I need boundaries. In order to know this, you just have to speak with my wife. You give me boundaries, I'm good, right? I need rules. I thrive under rules. It is such a pleasure to be here today. As we all know, the last few years have been trying on everybody. And for me personally, not having the face-to-face that we all enjoy on a regular basis has really hit me. And it's hit me in a very good and positive way when I now have the opportunity to meet with all of you face-to-face. So, Tom, I'm indebted to you for that. I'm indebted to all of you. It's a pleasure to be back. Oftentimes, and this is a theme we were covering just a few moments ago when we heard the prayer this morning, oftentimes it is easy to fall prey to the sad and the bad, and the doom and the gloom. Well, as we speak, there are rays of sun splashing off the wood floor here. Our room is light. We have a great day ahead of us. And we also have something to celebrate on the conservation front. You know, Tom had kindly said to me, what would you like to talk about? And when you give me options, you gotta be careful. But when I have something to share, which is monumental, at least in my field, it gives me a very easy choice. So today we're gonna be exploring the recent history of an animal that I've worked with for many years, an animal that we work with at Connecticut's Beardsley Zoo, known as the red wolf. In fact, we're entering our 5th decade of conservation effort with this species. So you can see that handsome devil over my shoulder, that is indeed a red wolf. And it is no hyperbole to say they're the rarest wolves in the world. Okay. Now this animal is not exactly new to science or to artists. This animal was painted by John James Audubon about 150 years ago. That painting is entitled The Texas Red Wolf. And that animal, if you look at it, has the same hallmark traits as red wolves through the American Southeast historically. So if we look at it, and by the way, by raise of hands, is anybody a dog person out there by any chance? I know the hands are going to shoot right up. There we go. Awesome. Well, I am too, and I'm told that dog people can't be cat people, but I work with wolves and tigers and leopards, so I don't count, right? I'm the anomaly. But I happen to love these guys. Yes, I use the L word. I love them. And I love them for many, many reasons, but not the least of which is that they are an American original. This species is only found in our nation. It is incredibly rare. And when we look at it at a glance, and we'll see more images of these guys, Audubon captured the essence of the red wolf in the fact that it's a large animal with this beautiful rust-colored coat, which is diagnostic. At a glance, coyote does not have a rust-colored coat, and neither does a gray wolf. They're close cousins. The rust-colored coat is the giveaway. Also, big triangular-shaped ears, right? They don't dominate the wolf's head, and we'll see this in upcoming images, but they're very prominent. Big, boxy snout, housing powerful jaws, a black tip tail, and a beautiful cream-colored fur on the belly. And those are things that make a red wolf at a glance. Here we see an image of a large male, really handsome male. You notice, again, the large head. If anybody is familiar with a Malamute as a breed, I think Malamute is a pretty good domestic analog to this fellow here. You got the blackish on the back, again, the cream color. The thing that wolves have in common that dogs lack across breeds, wolves have disproportionately, at least compared to dogs, disproportionately large paws. Those large paws help them to displace that weight and travel over a variety of surfaces, ice and snow and mud and sand. So it can displace the weight well. Another thing we notice about the wolf has a deeply keeled chest. So if you think of maybe a canoe, you know, or kayak, certain vessels, they come down to a deep keel. That gives the wolf the ability on these long legs, which are not off to the side, as we would have in a dog, but directly under the wolf to conserve energy, traveling all night in search of prey. And this, now, if you thought I was a wolf geek, by the way, you'd be right. I am a wolf geek, right? To remove all doubt. But I'm also a map geek. I love maps. And I actually searched far and wide for a map that had the original home range of the red wolf. And this sounds like an easy thing to do, right? Just look it up, conjure up a map from a good website, a reputable website like the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which is where I actually got this. It's a great map. But it's not so easy. And the reason it's not so easy is that the red wolf is a creature of enigma. The red wolf is an animal that has been only very recently defined and redefined by the scientific community. So if we say historically, what is a red wolf and where did it live? Those are questions that are often debated. It's an animal of controversy in many respects. Well, if we look at the map, we notice the southeastern U.S. is the home range, right? The sweet spot for the home range of the red wolf would be right here in the heart of the southeast on into the mid-Atlantic states. And the thing I love about this map, the reason we know it's so accurate, it actually traces river drainages. So if we look at it, we notice that it's not just a broad sweeping map like we might find in certain field guides where you have sort of a broad rounded approach to a map. But what this says to me is that there were thousands upon thousands of data points that went into the construction of this map. So it's a map that had a lot of thought behind it. So it's very accurate. But the thing I find really interesting, four quick aspects. If you look, right up there in eastern North Carolina, if you can see that, there's a little brown dot, a little brown blob. That is the icon of a wolf. Now that's significant because that is the site of the wild release area for red wolves. Red wolves were completely wiped out. No wild red wolves remaining, as far as we know. And this site in eastern North Carolina is considered non-essential experimental by the federal government. And those wolves are part of a program called the SSP, the Species Survival Plan. And having been removed from their entire natural range, all the way from the Texas-Mexico border on up into the Hudson Valley, those were the only wolves that were back on the landscape. Now here, at Ruby Red Patch, that's the last known contracting patch of wild red wolf habitat. In the 1970s, and when I say this to my kids, they're like, Dad, those are the olden days, in the 1970s. Not so, right? Not so. But in the 1970s, the red wolf was losing ground rapidly. And this was their last stand, right here. Far eastern Texas, southwestern Louisiana. So that's significant because what happened in the early 1970s, the red wolf was put on the endangered species list. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service went into the wild and collected, live trapped all the wolves they could find. And the reason they did this was because the red wolf was rapidly hybridizing with coyotes. Now, my biology teachers in middle school and high school, my professors in college would say, they can't hybridize, that doesn't make any sense. Well, guess what? We know now that these animals will hybridize under certain stressful conditions. So if we have very few, you have a little reverb there.
Say again, just talk.
Okay, here we go. So if we have, I think we're at Yankee Stadium.
I'm just getting some feedback, just a little.
Back up a little. So if we have very few wolves on the landscape, and we have many coyotes, the wolves will opportunistically breed because they have an imperative to survive. And the thought was that they're going to breed themselves into extinction. And that's what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and concerned citizens feared in the early 1970s, that the wolves were going to be lost to hybridization, just breeding themselves into oblivion. And that was a legitimate concern. So they collected the 240 wolves. Of those 240, 17 were deemed to be true red wolves. There were government veterinarians, government trappers, curators from some of the zoos in the area, wildlife biologists in federal government. And they reviewed every single wolf. And they had a rubric. They looked at the size of their paws, the length of their jaws, the height of their shoulders, every aspect of the wolf, morphologically, by form, They looked at their coat color as well. They said there were 17 wolves remaining, that's it. There are far more than 17 people in this room, right? So this was a precious, precious small population remaining. Of those 17, only 14 were healthy to be potential breeders, and of those 14, only 12 actually bred. So every red wolf on the planet that we are aware of, were aware of at the time, is descended from just 12 animals. That to me is profound and sad, and I think we can do better. So, before we leave the map, I want to mention two other aspects. If we look up into the Hudson Valley, these animals actually ranged into Long Island and out of the western shore of the Hudson River, the western bank of the Hudson. And it is not inconceivable to me, being just a stone's throw from Long Island Sound, that these animals could traverse from Long Island to Connecticut, either walking, catching an ice floe, swimming, right? Not too far. Or for that matter, swimming across the Hudson or catching an ice floe across the Hudson. It is entirely possible. So when we're looking at the red wolf, we're looking at an old neighbor. Oh, and lastly, I don't know if you can see that discrete watermark, but the artist put the red wolf's image in there, and I think that's kind of a cool artistic flourish. All right, so Audubon painted this image of the Florida black wolf, and the reason I included this is because this animal may actually have a link to the red wolf. These animals went extinct around 1905, as far as we know, but this is an enigmatic creature. We don't know for sure exactly what the Florida black wolf was, but we should discover that. We should explore this. It may have been, some biologists believe, it may have been a melanistic form, a blackish-coated form of the coyote. Some believe it may have been a remnant population of gray wolves that were isolated in the southeast. And others, and this is what I find particularly intriguing, believe it could have been a red wolf variant. You know how we have black gray squirrels here in Fairfield County? Right? That's a recessive gene pool of melanism and abundance of pigment. It could be the same thing here. So the long and short of it is, there's more work to be done. This is the guy that we're going to be talking about a little bit more in particular. His name is Peanut. He lives at Connecticut Beardsley Zoo. He's one of my colleagues. He's a coworker. And he is not only a handsome devil, but he is really emblematic of the future of this species in so many ways. Because he and his mate, Kiwanis, they are two of about 265 red wolves on the planet. And these are the animals that will very hopefully, and through all of our efforts, be leading to the birth of the next generation. I will tell you, without giving too much away, they get along swimmingly, and that's a great thing when it comes to wolves. All right, we're going to go through red wolves by the numbers for just a moment or two here, and I think this will give you a feel for the rarity to underscore this. And by the way, before we even do, it's really hard to compete with the cuteness quotient of that photo. So I'm going to let you just kind of soak that in for a moment.
Oh my God.
That litter was born at Connecticut's Beardsley Zoo several years ago. And my colleague, Rob Tomas, doesn't know that I'm giving him a shout out now as a hand model, but those are Rob's hands. And Rob, if he ever watches it, he will cringe and he will seek vengeance. But I will tell you that he was responsible for, in great part, for making sure that these young guys and gals were off to a great start. Our animal care team at Connecticut's Beardsley Zoo is exceptionally good at what they do. And they're really working with the rarest canids in the world. This is the rarest wolf on the planet, as you know. And it's key that we weigh these animals as routinely as possible and track that data so we know when they're nursing and thriving and how fast they're growing. Back to our numbers of the population. There are about, this image was captured several years ago, as I said, but this year, 2021, we actually have a boost in the number of red wolves in the wild. Just a few months ago, it was 20 wolves. Now we have about 30 wolves. So we're spiking up the number of wolves that we're releasing in the wild, which is key toward keeping them on the landscape. 43, the number of conservation institutions currently working with red wolves, Connecticut's Beardsley Zoo being one of them. 265, we covered that before, the number of red wolves on the planet. Now, we could, by fire code, fit 148 people in this room. So to give you an idea, could we actually fit them? Well, the fire department wouldn't want us to put all the red wolves in this room, and it's not going to happen anyway. But could we fit almost 300 red wolves in this room? Yeah, we could. These animals are precious and finite. Not a huge number there. 1973, the year the red wolf received federal protection under the Endangered Species Act. 1980, by that point they were declared extinct in the wild. Those 240 wolves were rounded up from the wild, you know that. So that was ancient history, and we were trying to get a breeding program going for them. And thankfully, we did. And in 1988, the first red wolf litter was born in the wild in Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge. That wolf icon we looked at near Cape Hatteras in eastern North Carolina, that was selected for a very specific reason, that site. Because at that time, there were no coyotes on the landscape in eastern North Carolina. So the red wolf had an opportunity there, right? A blank canvas. They had open real estate, and they didn't have any competitors with the coyotes. In 2016, an amazing program was launched by the AZA. Now, by the way, I live in a world populated by acronyms, so I'm going to go through them. If you don't remember them, don't worry, but they're going to keep coming. The AZA is known as the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. There are 242 at this point, accredited zoos, aquariums, and living museums in this group. And they are in North America, they are around the world. Most of them are US based. Now, those zoos, aquariums, and museums, they maintain the care for, as we say, we share the care for more than 1 million individual animals. That's no hyperbole, that's an actual number. It's like 1.2 million animals. It's a lot of work, a lot of mouths to feed. And the SAFE program is designed to put a face with a name. For example, if you say, I want to protect wolves, people say, okay, that's good. Some people would say that, some people might not agree. But if you say, I want to protect millipedes, well, that's good too, I think. I'm not so sure, I don't know much about millipedes. If we don't have a brand recognition, a face with a name for these animals, we can't rally support for them. If you don't have the designation of a name for a particular species, how can you protect it? Because it has to have an identity in the public realm. They're not toothpaste, right? They're not products. They're living creatures, but they also have to have relevance and they have to have a connection with humans, because if they don't, we can't rally the resources needed to protect them. And the SAFE program, which stands for Saving Animals from Extinction, does just that. In fact, these guys, red wolves, were among the first 10 species listed in that program in 2016. And what that program does is rally recognition and support and marketing toward the recognition of those animals and their support, their protection. So, how is the red wolf similar or distinct from its cousins? Well, if we look at the gray wolf, the red wolf, and the coyote, these are three cousins with a lot of commonalities, but variations on a great theme. Mother Nature really, really did her work here, right? Did a great job, because these animals are astoundingly good at what they do. They can prey on small mice, from mice to moose, they can make it happen. And these guys are the ones that limit the spread of disease in the wild by preying on the sick and the weak. And I know we've heard this many times when it comes to predators, but they truly are a refining mechanism in nature. They provide the balance that we not only seek in nature, but the balance that prevents the spread of disease. So wolves are absolutely vital and indispensable on the landscape, and as are their cousins, the coyotes. So what makes them similar or different? Well, you see at a glance, they're all the same basic design. But the gray wolf being the largest animal, the largest member of the wild dog family at up to 142 pounds, that's a big creature, right? And by the way, wolves, unlike certain domestic breeds, they don't carry excess mass, right? They're lean, muscular creatures. A small coyote in say, LA County, I've seen coyotes in Griffith Park in LA, 18, 20 pounds, tiny, little females, tiny, the size of a large fox. But the gray wolves, by contrast, Malamute size or bigger, massive animals, but the same basic design. What are some of the distinctions? Well, the wolf's head houses a very powerful set of jaws, with a closing power oftentimes exceeding 1,000 pounds of pressure per square inch, enough to bring down large prey like caribou or moose. So the wolf has a very large head. The ears on the wolf don't dominate the head, right? They're kind of proportional. The wolves on a coyote kind of stand out. You can see it with this guy, right? The ears on the coyote are more triangular and more prominent. The nose pad on a wolf is larger than an inch, typically an inch and a half. On a coyote, it's a little less than an inch. Don't bring a tape measure. Not advisable, right? Don't do that. Take my word for it. Also, wolves have disproportionately larger feet, so much larger feet than the coyote based on the size of the body. All little things, but to a biologist, very telling things. And this is important and will become important in the images ahead. Right now, in fact. So I put the title on here, Hiding in Plain Sight. This is an image of a group of wild canids, we'll leave it at that for now, mystery canids, to heighten the mystery, taken in Galveston Island State Park, Texas. In 2008, there's a gentleman by the name of Ron Wooten. Ron Wooten was a specialist with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Trained as a biologist, he's a man who's got an eye for detail. In 2008, he lost a pet of his, one of his pets, to a pack of coyotes, which is sad. But that incident is highly significant because that led him to question exactly what happened. Because coyotes, although we see the departure from this in recent years, historically coyotes don't range in packs, they range in pairs, individuals or pairs. So this was a large group of animals. They unfortunately preyed upon his pet. He lost the pet. He tracked the animals. He tracked them. He took castings of their feet. He photographed them. He took hundreds of photos, amassed an entire archive of these animals. And over the years, he got the sense that these weren't coyotes. These weren't typical coyotes that he recognized from his youth from the area. So he explored this. What he found over the next few years were two road-killed animals. Of those two road-killed animals, he decided, I have to conduct a deeper investigation. So he did what any concerned citizen scientist would do. He took a scalpel and he took 2 biopsies from them, right? Bit more than most people would do, obviously. But here's what happened. He took those samples and he contacted biologists and geneticists all across the U.S. and Canada. Nobody answered his calls, nobody answered his emails, or said, not interested. Don't want to examine them, they're coyotes, not of interest to me. There were 2 individuals who said, you know what? That's intriguing. Your photos, they kind of caught my eye. Do you have those samples? He said, yes. Please send them along. So he sent those samples along. One of them, unfortunately, was lost in transit. So the biologist, the geneticist who agreed to examine the samples genetically said, can you send any other samples? He said, I don't have any other samples. And she said, do you have the device that you took the sample from? He said, I have the scalpel. She said, can you send the scalpel FedEx? He sent the scalpel FedEx. True story. They extracted DNA from the scalpel and from the other sample. And the biologist, by the way, the geneticist, I have to give them credit. Dr. Kristen Bresky from Michigan Technological University and Dr. Bridget Von Holt from Princeton University. And these 2 researchers had worked together. They were experts on the lineage of wild canids, wild members of the dog family here in North America. So they examined those DNA samples minutely, exhaustively. And after their examination, now fast forward to 2018, they had their results. And the results, from the perspective of conservationists, my personal perspective, were astounding. What they discovered was that these animals were not coyotes. These animals were not red wolves. They were creatures from 2 worlds. These were animals that we didn't know existed. And they actually represent a hybridized red wolf variant. So the scales tip in favor of the red wolf and away from the coyote. Now, to conservationists working on these programs, the Species Survival Plan program for more than 40 years, when all the red wolves in the world are known to you, every single one of them has an ID number and a genetic, a breeding coefficient. So we know the identity of every single animal. And now we say, wait, there are more red wolves out there? This would be akin to strolling down the beach and stubbing your toe on a treasure chest. A genetic reservoir of wealth that was undetected, unknown for more than 40 years was discovered. and verified in 2018. But wait, there's more. So in 2018, what they also discovered was that in this population was an unknown trait that was not present in the red wolf population. The breeding program that we worked on, all these zoos and aquariums, I say aquariums because some of the aquariums actually work with terrestrial land species too. Nobody knew about this variation. Nobody knew about these animals. What this means for the red wolf? In short, a very bright future. Because what it means is that now we have the ability to isolate those genes and reinvigorate, bolster the health of that of the red wolf population. And biologists now know that there are other red wolves on the landscape. So they're actually conducting surveys in Louisiana, Texas, to find other red wolves. So this is really astounding news. But as you know, I'm a wolf geek, so I'm easily astounded by things such as this. So let's take a quick look at the map. This is the area, about an hour and a half from Houston, where Ron Wooten discovered this population. Or I should say, Ron Wooten identified the samples, and Drs. Von Holt and Bresky confirmed. And by the way, their confirmation also led, it reconfirmed a previous academic study that the red wolf is indeed a unique species. Why is that important? Because if you were a species, you can command resources towards your protection, as we talked about before. If you're not a recognized species, it may not work. So let's look once again. That's the original range map. Look at the ruby red area, please. And then we're going to go back. Galveston Island in 2021. Red Wolf Range in 1973. Same area. So this is what the mystery canids actually look like. And here's the really neat sort of, I don't know, the splash of the exclamation point on the sentence here. These guys have what are known as ghost genes, or ghost alleles. And they call them ghost alleles because it sounds counterintuitive, but by breeding with the coyotes, the red wolf genes were both absorbed in that population and retained. You would think they'd be swamped and they'd be gone forever, but that's not the case. They're actually retained. And so the genes, we may not see it outwardly in the animal, although this animal looks decidedly reddish to me, but the genes are there, they are alive and well, and they are known as ghost genes. So not necessarily visible to the naked eye, but very much present. These are just a quick image of wolves of the world here. These are variations on the same theme, with the red wolf being over here in the far left, lower left corner, the red wolf being our wolf of scrutiny and spotlight today. This guy here is known as the eastern wolf, a close cousin of the red wolf that lives in eastern Canada, and actually, eastern wolves from Quebec, from the Quebec region in recent years have come down into the American Northeast, into Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. So this is an animal that has very close lineage to the red wolf, and that lineage was reconfirmed by the study in 2018. So we have still representatives of their close cousins in the Northeast here. This is their home range, beautiful shot of Algonquin Provincial Park. This is Disney World for wolves, right? Moose, beaver, white-tailed deer, you name it. They've got plenty of game and not too far. Now we think, well, Ontario, right? That's pretty far away. It's over 500 miles from here. For a wolf, 500 miles, not that far. No joke. Wolves can travel up to 40 miles in a night. Now, they're not necessarily packing their bags and looking to come down to Weston or to Fairfield County, but it is not unusual for wolves to wander tremendous distances. In fact, that's what Mother Nature has designed them to do, to disperse, colonize, and establish a new territory. They are pioneers in the animal kingdom. Here's a quick image of the site in eastern North Carolina. Now, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was very far-sighted in their plan to reintroduce these wolves to eastern North Carolina. And at the time, in the late 70s, early 80s, there were no coyotes in that area, as we mentioned. Well, guess what? Mother Nature, the expression Mother Nature abhors a vacuum, right? Anytime there's sort of an opening on the landscape, somebody is going to fill that opening. Somebody's going to take advantage of those resources and look to set up camp, and that's what the coyotes did. So they moved in, and with very few red wolves on the landscape, the coyotes come into the fringe of their territory. and they'll actually battle one another, and the wolves always win. But when there are fewer wolves, opportunistically, the wolves will breed with the coyotes. So they either make love or make war. In this case, when there are very few of them, they breed, they raise pups. That is a problem because then we lose the wolf footprint on the landscape. Okay, the Endangered Species Act, again established in 1973, that has been responsible for the preservation of very key species like the California condor and the whooping crane, the grizzly bear, and of course our national symbol, the bald eagle. I'm so happy to tell you this, and you may know this, but many of you, by raise of hands, just curious, who has seen a bald eagle flying in Fairfield County this year, or perched on the roadside? Awesome, I love it. 10, 12, 20 years ago, we wouldn't see those hands go up. We see 1 or 2 hands in the room. So for those people at home, a lot of hands went up, right? This is wonderful. We actually have bald eagles that hunt in the Paquonic River in Bridgeport at Connecticut's Beardsley Zoo. They perch in the hemlocks above our gift shop, swoop down in the river, and grab river herring. So bald eagles are making a comeback here in Connecticut, and this is due to federal protection. When we give animals the protection they need, they are remarkably resilient. Really quickly, this is an actual shot of Mexican wolves, not red wolves, but they're close cousins, and we have these guys to provide care for them at Connecticut's Beardsley Zoo. They are adjacent to our red wolves. Very similar history to the red wolf. There are only about 400 of these animals on the planet, and by the same time frame, by the early 80s, these guys were extinct in the wild. I'm very happy to say that those pups were raised in New Mexico at the Albuquerque Biopark, a member of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. 7 pups plus mom and dad were released in the wilds of Mexico earlier this year. First time ever. And speaking of first, the Red Wolf program was the first program to get an apex predator back on the landscape. A lot of people said it couldn't be done. Some people say it shouldn't be done. Well, guess what? They're supposed to be there, and they actually help the health of the environment dramatically. And when it comes to hope for the red wolf, well, I look at that guy running free there in a field in Alligator River, and that gives me much hope. That hope is bolstered by a recent decision by a U.S. District Court judge to mandate the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service renew their efforts and get these animals back in the wild, which they have done. And we are going to try this. Jim, I thank you for the help. Let's see if we can make this go. This is an introduction of our 2 wolves, Peanut and Kwani. Okay.
This one didn't want to do it.
That's okay. All right. Undeniable cuteness. All right. Jim, I was talking about you. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you for that. I know. I couldn't help myself. Sorry. All right. So I will tell you, just to underscore the red wolf's situation and the hope for these animals on the landscape, which is indeed brighter and bolstered in 2021. If you want to learn more about this program, about the Red Wolf Species Survival Plan program, the history of the red wolf and how they're doing in the wild, I wrote a piece on these animals that was published this past month in Natural History magazine. It's called Renewed Hope for the Red Wolf, same title as our presentation. I invite you to check it out. Give me constructive criticism as long as you like it. If you don't like it, I don't want to hear from you. But I hope you like it. I want to say I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with all of you today. And if you do have further questions, I'm going to be here for a little bit. I look forward to that. But once again, thank you for indulging me in one of my favorite topics.
We were privileged just to hear from the guy I talk about as the man who speaks with animals. He's absolutely incredible what he does. Now, I'm going to put him on the spot. If you see him cringe, let me know. Last time he was here, he said, gee, if we can put together a small group of people or a group of folks, we can bring them over to the zoo and I'll put on a tour. I'm going to ask him to do the same thing. Because you're in for a treat.
Yeah.
You are absolutely in for a treat. The last time I was there, we were in the wolf's den, and he started speaking, and of course it went across out over the airways, the wolves came out with the ears perked up, looking for him. So Jim,
He knows he's bringing
that
up
again?
dinner. Bringing up lunch or dinner, yeah.
I'd be happy to host you,
All right,
absolutely.
let me know, we'll work it out through Weston Kiwanis, our friends from Stanford are involved if they'd like to go. We'll put together a group of people and we'll all get over to the Beardsley Zoo and watch Jim talk to the animals.
We can give him to the.
We can feed the weak ones. Feed the weak ones.
Yeah, they weed out
We can
the population, yes.
And Jim, also, we really want to thank you for coming. I hope you remember us.
Thank you, Denise, I will. Yes,
We really
yes.
appreciate your efforts
Thank
and
you.
definitely can associate with what you do because I'm responsible for the preservation of monuments.
Wonderful, yes. Your job is far
We
more
don't
difficult
need
than I
them to go extinct either.
Yes.
This is fantastic. You know, we often have animal sightings in Weston and more lately. And it's just something that we do. We send pictures on Facebook, we send them to Animal Control, and we've been looking for wolves. You know, so
Yes.
the homeowners take pictures, they send them in, and we're trying to identify who come here. So we will let you know for sure.
Please do. Yeah, no, seriously, I mentioned to Tom, I'm happy to help with any ID. If you have wolves, turtles, salamanders, you need an ID, just let me know.
Do you have a Facebook for the Beardsley Zoo where people can post a picture of something they've seen?
We sure do,
That
yeah.
would be an interesting thing to do.
We do. We have a zoo Facebook site. We do a lot of Facebook Live presentations out of the zoo so that folks who aren't able to make it into the zoo or warm in their homes can visit us on a winter day. But we sure do. Yeah.
Excellent. So thank you.
Thank you
for
very much.
coming.
We appreciate it.
So I think we are ready for breakfast, and then after breakfast, we'll do Happy Bucks, and we have a few important announcements before the board meeting.